3 months after my wife told me she didn't love me anymore, I caught her sitting across from my apartment for the 8th time. The first few sightings felt like coincidence. By the 4th, coincidence had packed its bags and left town. By the 8th, I had photographs, timestamps, and a growing file on my laptop labeled Jennifer. My name is Michael Carter. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I believed I understood exactly who my wife was. Turns out, I understood the version she wanted me to see. The version that sat across from me at dinner. The version that smiled in family photos. The version that looked me straight in the eye one Tuesday evening and erased 20 years with 7 words. I don't love you anymore, Michael. Her voice carried the same calm tone she used when ordering coffee. That part stayed with me. People expect shouting when a marriage dies. They imagine slammed doors, accusations, dramatic exits. My marriage ended with the emotional force of a bank statement. Clinical, precise, final. I watched her fold her hands together on the kitchen island. She looked relieved, like someone who had finally finished carrying a heavy box. I remember staring at the grain of the countertop because it gave my eyes somewhere to go. Looking back, that moment taught me something important. Jennifer had rehearsed that conversation hundreds of times. I was hearing it for the first time. She already lived several chapters ahead of me. Most men react. They argue. They negotiate. They hunt for explanations. I spent the next 48 hours doing something else entirely. I hired an attorney. I opened a separate checking account. I pulled copies of every financial statement from the previous 3 years. Retirement accounts, brokerage records, mortgage documents, insurance policies, business contracts. Every piece of paper that could become a weapon during a divorce landed in a secure digital folder. Experience taught me that emotions fade. Documentation survives. Jennifer expected heartbreak. She expected questions. She expected a man fighting for another chance. Instead, she watched me move through the house with the focus of an auditor preparing for an acquisition. 3 days later, I signed a lease on a furnished apartment 30 miles away. 5 days later, I transferred my direct deposit. 7 days later, I loaded my truck before sunrise and drove away. No farewell speech. No final argument. No dramatic scene for either of us to remember later. The strangest part came afterward. Silence. Complete silence. Jennifer never called. She never texted. She never asked where I went. For a while, I assumed she felt satisfied with the outcome. Then something changed. A mutual friend mentioned seeing her at a restaurant near my new neighborhood. Another friend told me Jennifer had started asking unusual questions. Where was I working now? Who was I spending time with? Had I started dating? Small questions. Harmless questions. At least on the surface. Then the sightings started. The coffee shop. The grocery store. The fitness center. Places she had zero reason to visit. Each appearance added another piece to a puzzle I hadn't realized existed. Last Thursday, I decided to stop guessing. I parked across the street from my apartment building and waited. 27 minutes later, a silver Lexus rolled into the lot. Jennifer stepped out, stayed inside her car, and raised a pair of binoculars toward my building. I took 3 photographs, then a 4th, and that was when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The text contained a single sentence. She's been doing this for weeks, and you still don't know the worst part. I moved through the first 2 weeks in my new apartment with surgical precision, every action measured, every step calculated. I labeled folders with account numbers and dates, cross-referencing each transaction with old credit card statements and wire transfers. My laptop hummed as I pulled spreadsheets, PDFs, and scanned checks into a secure folder named Asset Audit. Each document became a node in a growing map of financial control, a visual representation of every asset Jennifer could imagine claiming. I opened bank portals simultaneously on 2 monitors, toggling between investment accounts and joint checking, verifying signatures, tracing transfers. I called attorneys for hypothetical scenarios, asked pointed questions about trust funds, rental properties, and business contracts, recording each answer in my notebook. While she assumed I was adjusting to solitude, I was constructing a fortress of knowledge. I compiled IP addresses, timestamps, and login records, setting up alerts for any unusual access, tracking her online patterns without leaving a trace. By the 3rd day, I had a clear sense of her routines, which friends she consulted, which businesses she asked about, which of my movements she monitored indirectly through shared acquaintances. I simulated her thought processes, projecting her fears, her assumptions about my vulnerability. I created contingency plans for each imagined maneuver, listing counteractions for potential confrontations. I set up reminders to photograph any suspicious appearances near my new workspaces or public meetings, noting distance, duration, and direction of approach. Simultaneously, I evaluated legal ramifications, property laws, custody considerations, financial disclosures, potential misstatements, and the strength of evidence for each. I rehearsed conversations in my mind, framing statements, responses, and queries so that I could maintain composure under scrutiny. Every check, every alert, every log created reinforced my autonomy. Jennifer's attempts to anticipate my actions now played into my strategy. Each misstep became data, each overreach a predictable variable. I noticed patterns in her communications, questions repeated, phrasing that implied expectation, subtle probes about my finances. I flagged these as points to verify through document review and audit trails. Night after night, I traced the digital echoes of her curiosity, then cross-referenced them with my own movement and financial activity. By the end of the second week, I had created a timeline of her stalking, annotated with possible intentions and risk assessments. A small victory, almost invisible to her, but critical. Then a new anomaly appeared. A series of encrypted emails from an unfamiliar address, intersecting times when Jennifer's observations should have ended. I paused, rechecked my security logs, and discovered that someone else had begun tracking my accounts, someone with technical knowledge that rivaled my own, leaving subtle traces but enough to confirm presence. My pulse quickened, a new layer of uncertainty entering the carefully constructed system, a variable I had not accounted for. The first rule of any investigation is simple: follow the motive before following the person. That unknown message sat at the center of my screen for almost an hour while I reviewed every possibility. Jennifer had many flaws, but technical sophistication never ranked among them. She knew people. She gathered information through conversations, favors, and emotional leverage. Encryption, proxy routing, and masked metadata belonged to a different world. That realization shifted the board. I stopped looking at Jennifer as the source and started looking at her as the client. Someone was helping her. Someone with skills. I exported the email headers into an analysis tool and traced the routing path. The sender had covered most of their tracks, but experienced people rarely chase perfection. They chase speed. One overlooked relay node pointed toward a small cybersecurity consulting firm across town. I pulled public records, employee lists, corporate filings, business registrations. 32 minutes later, a name surfaced repeatedly beside recent transactions linked to Jennifer's credit card statements. Ethan Brooks, independent consultant, former network security analyst. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. The name meant nothing to me, but the financial connection did. Jennifer had paid him 3 separate times over 6 weeks. The amount stayed small enough to avoid attention. $400, $600, $900. Most people overlook patterns when the numbers appear harmless. I spent 20 years managing operational budgets. Patterns jump off the page. I requested additional bank records from my attorney the next morning. By lunchtime, another piece fell into place. Ethan Brooks had received payments from Jennifer beginning 12 days after I moved out. 12 days. That timeline mattered. She claimed she wanted distance. She claimed she wanted freedom. Yet less than 2 weeks later, she hired someone to gather information about my life. Looking back, I think that was the moment I finally stopped seeing her as my wife and started seeing her as a case study. Obsession follows its own logic. The human mind hates losing access to something it believes belongs to it. Jennifer had ended the marriage. Jennifer had opened the door. Jennifer had watched me walk through it. Somewhere along the way, she expected me to remain frozen in place emotionally, financially, maybe even physically. Instead, I kept moving. The faster I moved forward, the harder she pulled backward. I built a timeline stretching across my office wall. Every sighting, every transaction, every message, every unusual event. The picture growing in front of me looked less like curiosity and more like a surveillance project. Then I found the detail that changed everything. 3 days before the anonymous text arrived, Ethan Brooks submitted an invoice. Buried inside the itemized description sat a 6-word note. Client requests accelerated reporting schedule. My pulse slowed. Accelerated reporting meant urgency. Urgency meant new information. New information meant Jennifer had learned something recently. I opened my phone, enlarged the photographs from the apartment parking lot, and zoomed into the passenger seat of her Lexus. A man sat there in one image. Half hidden. Baseball cap. Dark jacket. The photo quality was poor, but one thing remained perfectly clear. He was holding a camera with a telephoto lens pointed directly at my apartment window. The photograph changed the entire equation. Up until that moment, I viewed Jennifer as a woman struggling to process a decision she had made too quickly. The camera lens told a different story. Regret does not require surveillance equipment. Curiosity does not require hired specialists. Someone had crossed into planning, and planning always leaves a paper trail. I enlarged the image and ran a comparison against public photographs from Ethan Brooks's company website. The angle obscured most facial features, but body proportions matched. Height, build, shoulder width. Enough to move from theory toward probability. I forwarded everything to my attorney and scheduled a private meeting the next morning. He reviewed the timeline in silence, flipping through screenshots, invoices, bank transfers, and observation logs. Then he asked a question that caught me off guard. What exactly do you think they are looking for? I opened my mouth and realized I lacked an answer. Financial information seemed unlikely. Jennifer already possessed access to years of disclosures from the marriage. Property records sat in public databases. Employment details remained easy to obtain. The more I examined the situation, the less sense it made. Then my attorney pointed toward the payment schedule. 3 invoices. 3 escalating amounts. 3 accelerated requests. People pay for outcomes, he said. Find the outcome. That sentence stayed in my head all afternoon. I returned home and rebuilt the timeline from the beginning. Every sighting, every question passed through mutual friends, every online search, every unexplained appearance. Hours later, a pattern emerged. Jennifer's activity intensified whenever I spent time with one specific person. Her name was Rachel Morgan, 40 years old, financial consultant, divorced, smart, independent. We met through a professional networking event 6 weeks earlier. Coffee became conversations. Conversations became friendship. Nothing dramatic, nothing hidden. Yet every spike in surveillance activity aligned almost perfectly with our interactions. I highlighted the dates in yellow. The visual correlation jumped off the page. Suddenly, the behavior looked less random and more targeted. Jennifer wanted information about Rachel. That realization opened another door. I searched deeper into the invoices and found a reference number attached to the latest payment. Most people would ignore it. I entered it into a business records database. The result made me sit upright. The payment connected to a background investigation request. Rachel's name appeared in the case file summary. My pulse slowed as the implications settled in. Jennifer had hired someone to investigate a woman she had never met. A woman who held zero connection to our divorce. A woman whose only crime involved sharing a few conversations with me. I stared at the screen for several minutes before another notification appeared. This one came from Rachel herself. A short message. 7 words. Michael, someone contacted my employer today. Beneath the message sat a screenshot. The caller identification number belonged to Ethan Brooks. Rachel called me 15 minutes after sending the screenshot. Her voice carried more irritation than fear, which told me a lot about her character. People who live their lives honestly rarely panic when someone starts digging. They get angry. She explained that the caller introduced himself as a consultant conducting a professional verification review. The questions focused less on employment and more on personal relationships. Had she been spending time with me? Did she know details about my finances? Had I discussed future plans? Every question pointed toward the same objective. Jennifer wanted intelligence. Rachel answered almost nothing before ending the conversation. Then she contacted me. That decision changed everything. Up until then, Jennifer controlled the flow of information. She asked questions. She hired investigators. She gathered reports. Suddenly, I had a witness. More importantly, I had someone willing to document the process. I requested a copy of the call log from Rachel's employer. She agreed immediately. By evening, I added another layer to the growing file. Timestamps, duration, caller identification, contact records. Every piece strengthened the timeline. My attorney reviewed the material and leaned back in his chair. This has moved beyond curiosity, he said. She is building a profile. The phrase stuck with me. Building a profile. Jennifer already knew me better than anyone. She knew my habits, my strengths, my weaknesses. She knew what coffee I ordered and how I organized financial statements. Yet she kept paying for more information. Why? The answer arrived from a direction I never expected. 2 days later, a mutual friend named Kevin called. Kevin and I had known each other for almost 15 years. He attended our wedding. He spent holidays at our house. He spoke carefully, choosing each word like it carried weight. Then he told me Jennifer had been asking questions about engagement rings. I almost laughed. Rachel and I had shared a handful of dinners and several long conversations. Nothing more. Yet Jennifer had apparently convinced herself that I was preparing to start an entirely new life. Looking back, that assumption explained the acceleration. Every surveillance report, every payment, every appearance near my apartment, every question directed at mutual friends. Jennifer was chasing a future that existed only inside her imagination. Obsession often creates its own evidence. The mind starts connecting unrelated dots until the fantasy feels real. I spent the next week quietly testing that theory. Through friends, social circles, and professional contacts, I released carefully selected information. Small details, harmless details. A business lunch became a private meeting. A networking event became a weekend trip. Nothing false enough to create legal issues. Nothing significant enough to cause harm. I simply watched where the information traveled. The results appeared almost immediately. Within 48 hours, Jennifer showed up at 2 locations connected to those rumors. The pattern confirmed everything. She was reacting rather than investigating. Emotion had taken control of the process. Then another email arrived from the anonymous sender. This time the message contained an attachment. A PDF, 23 pages long. The title across the top made my stomach tighten. Subject Investigation Report, Michael Carter. I opened the report expecting speculation. Instead, I found a professionally structured dossier. 23 pages. Cover page. Executive summary. Timeline. Financial observations. Social connections. Behavioral analysis. Someone had spent weeks building a portrait of my life. The irony almost made me laugh. Jennifer ended our marriage because she believed she had already figured me out. Now she was paying strangers to explain me back to herself. I started reading carefully. The first section summarized my employment history. Accurate. The second covered public financial records. Also accurate. Then the report drifted into assumptions. It described Rachel as a probable romantic partner. It projected future cohabitation. It estimated combined income potential. By page 11, the investigator had stopped documenting facts and started selling a narrative. A profitable narrative. Fear creates repeat customers. I understood that immediately. Every paragraph amplified Jennifer's worst suspicions. Every conclusion nudged her toward another invoice. Then I reached page 17. My attention sharpened. The investigator had included excerpts from conversations Jennifer held during consultation meetings. Apparently, Ethan Brooks recorded detailed client notes. Most consultants do. Most clients never expect those notes to become evidence. Jennifer's comments filled nearly 2 pages. I read each line twice. She never asked whether I was happy. She never asked whether I was healing. She never asked whether I regretted leaving. Her questions revolved around something else entirely. Control. Was I spending money differently? Was I planning to relocate permanently? Was I creating new legal structures? Was I transferring assets? Was Rachel influencing financial decisions? Every concern pointed toward one fear. She believed she was losing visibility into my life. Looking back, I think that terrified her more than the divorce itself. During our marriage, she always knew where I stood. She understood my schedule, my finances, my habits, my priorities. Predictability creates comfort. Then I disappeared from the system she understood. The report confirmed something I had suspected for weeks. Jennifer was chasing certainty. Unfortunately for her, certainty no longer existed. I forwarded the document to my attorney and Rachel. Within an hour, Rachel called. She sounded stunned. One sentence from the report caught her attention immediately. An investigator had listed her private residential address. That changed the conversation. Curiosity became liability. Surveillance became documentation. Documentation became exposure. My attorney agreed. He instructed me to preserve every file, every screenshot, every email, and every payment record. Then he delivered news that shifted the balance of power for the first time. His legal team had completed discovery on recent financial activity connected to the separation. Several transactions stood out: consulting fees, surveillance expenses, background investigation payments. The total exceeded $15,000. Jennifer had spent more tracking my future than managing her own. Then my attorney mentioned one final detail. During document review, his team discovered a separate payment chain linked to a personal account Jennifer never disclosed during mediation. An account opened 6 weeks before she ended the marriage. An account I had never seen before. An account that received regular deposits from someone whose name immediately stopped me cold: Ethan Brooks. The discovery of that account shifted my attention away from surveillance and toward motive. Money rarely tells the entire story, but it almost always reveals pressure points. My attorney obtained additional records through formal channels and built a transaction chart stretching back 6 months. The pattern looked strange from the beginning. Ethan transferred funds into Jennifer's private account. Then Jennifer paid consulting invoices back to Ethan's company through a separate business account. The money moved in circles. Legitimate consultants collect fees. They do not usually fund their clients. That detail bothered me enough to spend an entire weekend dissecting the records. I mapped every deposit, every withdrawal, every invoice number, and every payment date. By Sunday evening, a second pattern emerged. The transfers increased whenever Jennifer requested expanded investigations. The more obsessed she became, the more financial activity appeared between them. My attorney reviewed the chart and reached the same conclusion. Something existed beneath the consulting relationship. Whether it involved debt, leverage, business arrangements, or simple manipulation remained unclear. Either way, transparency had disappeared from their arrangement long before I learned about it. Meanwhile, Jennifer's behavior continued escalating. Mutual friends reported unusual conversations. She asked where I spent weekends. She asked whether Rachel stayed overnight at my apartment. She asked whether I planned to remarry. Each question carried urgency. Each answer seemed to generate 3 new questions. Looking back, I think she had reached a dangerous emotional stage. She no longer chased facts. She chased reassurance. Every report she purchased failed to provide it. Every answer opened another uncertainty. Obsession works that way. It promises relief and delivers dependency. Rachel noticed it too. She received another inquiry through professional channels. This time the caller claimed to represent an investment group interested in her background. Rachel recognized the tactic immediately and recorded the interaction. The recording landed in my inbox later that afternoon. Listening to it felt surreal. The caller spent less time discussing Rachel than discussing me. Career plans, personal habits, travel schedules, financial projections. Whoever directed these inquiries wanted a forecast of my future. Not my past. My future. That distinction mattered. Then the situation took an unexpected turn. 2 days later, Jennifer contacted me directly for the first time since the separation. No lawyer. No intermediary. No investigator. Just a text message. 7 simple words. Can we meet? I need clarity. I stared at the screen longer than I expected. Months earlier, I would have rushed toward that conversation. Months earlier, I would have searched for hope inside those words. Now I saw something different. Timing. Her message arrived less than 48 hours after the hidden account surfaced. Less than 48 hours after several investigation records entered legal review. Less than 48 hours after her information pipeline started collapsing. My attorney advised caution. Rachel advised distance. I chose documentation. I agreed to meet in a public setting and informed my legal team beforehand. Jennifer accepted immediately. That response alone told me how badly she wanted the meeting. Then, 1 hour before we were scheduled to sit down together, my attorney called. His voice carried the kind of focus that always meant trouble. Another document had surfaced during financial discovery. This one contained a signed agreement between Jennifer and Ethan Brooks. And according to the date at the top, they signed it nearly a month before she ended our marriage. The signed agreement altered the dynamic entirely. Jennifer believed she controlled every variable, every report, every appearance. She assumed access to information guaranteed influence over outcomes. Instead, the document revealed that the initiative, the orchestration, and the financial leverage lay partially outside her hands. The agreement detailed objectives, payment schedules, and expected deliverables from Ethan Brooks's firm. Pages included deadlines for intelligence gathering, protocols for social observation, and reporting formats specifying frequency, detail, and urgency. Every clause represented an explicit acknowledgement of her dependency on an external agent. My attorney explained that this meant leverage had shifted. Jennifer had created a chain of operations in which she was no longer the fulcrum. Each invoice I tracked, each report I documented, now contained evidence of her reliance on a third party. Her autonomy diminished with each line of the contract. I cross-referenced the dates of signed deliverables with bank transactions and discovered a precise correlation. Payments corresponded exactly with completed observation reports. The pattern extended beyond mere coincidence. Jennifer had been monitoring me obsessively while inadvertently funding a system that could be quantified, traced, and anticipated. That realization prompted action. I updated spreadsheets, plotted surveillance windows, and overlaid transaction timelines with observation records. I notified Rachel and coordinated with my attorney to compile a dossier suitable for court or mediation. Transparency became a weapon. Each photo, each invoice, each recorded interaction established an unbroken chain of documented behavior. Jennifer's desire to influence outcomes no longer mattered. The power rested in my comprehension of the sequence, in my preparation, and in the documentation. I had shifted from subject to observer, from participant to strategist. The psychological stakes escalated. Jennifer now attempted to control my future, while unknowingly exposing herself to scrutiny at every step. The precision of my countermeasures caused her to escalate further. She appeared at Rachel's professional locations, questioned mutual acquaintances, and deployed intermediaries to probe my schedule. Every action fed my timeline. Every effort to manipulate outcomes created new documentation. By the 5th week, I had assembled enough intelligence to anticipate her moves before they occurred. That was when the final anomaly appeared. An unknown individual called Rachel, providing information about my next planned meeting. Rachel recorded the call. The voice on the line mentioned specifics about my schedule, locations, and contacts that neither Jennifer nor Ethan could have known in isolation. This new element implied another participant, someone with direct access to my planning. The chessboard expanded unexpectedly, and for the first time, I realized the situation included variables I had not accounted for, suggesting the final twist in the surveillance structure was imminent. The final piece arrived 3 days later. My attorney traced the source of the leaked scheduling information and uncovered something almost absurd in its simplicity. The unknown participant was neither a private investigator nor a hidden business partner. It was Kevin, the same friend who attended our wedding. The same friend who called months earlier pretending concern. The same friend who quietly supplied updates whenever Jennifer asked. His involvement carried none of the drama I expected. No conspiracy. No secret romance. No elaborate scheme. Just weakness. Jennifer asked. Kevin answered. One conversation became 10. 10 became 20. Over time, he convinced himself he was helping 2 people find closure. Instead, he fed an obsession. When confronted with the records, he admitted everything. Dates, messages, calls, requests. The admissions completed the timeline. Suddenly, every unexplained appearance, every perfectly timed question, every surveillance adjustment made sense. Jennifer had built an information network around a life she chose to leave. The irony felt impossible to ignore. She spent months studying my future while her own life stalled in place. The legal process concluded shortly afterward. The financial disclosures exposed the hidden account. The consulting expenses entered the record. The investigation reports joined the documentation file. Once everything sat under professional review, the entire structure collapsed under its own weight. Facts tend to do that. They remove the oxygen from speculation. A week later, Jennifer finally sat across from me. No investigators. No consultants. No intermediaries. Just the 2 of us. For the first time in months, she looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. The exhaustion of someone who spent too long chasing certainty. She spoke carefully. She asked whether Rachel and I were serious. She asked whether I planned to move away permanently. She asked whether I ever thought about coming back. Then she asked the question that revealed everything. When did you stop needing me? I looked at her for several seconds before answering. Because the truth surprised even me. I never stopped needing the version of her I married. I stopped chasing the version standing in front of me. Those are very different people. She lowered her eyes. For a moment, I saw the weight of every report, every payment, every late-night search, every attempt to monitor a life that no longer belonged to her. Then she nodded. No argument. No dramatic confession. Just acceptance. We left the conversation with more peace than I thought possible. Rachel remained in my life. My career continued growing. The apartment eventually became a house. The surveillance ended. The questions stopped. The reports disappeared. Yet one lesson stayed with me. Some people think love dies when someone walks away. In reality, love often dies much earlier. It dies when respect turns into control. It dies when trust turns into monitoring. It dies when curiosity turns into possession. Years from now, I will probably forget the account numbers, the invoices, the timelines, and the investigations. I will remember one thing. Freedom begins the moment you stop proving your worth to someone determined to measure it. Last week, while sorting old files before deleting them permanently, I found the very first anonymous message that started this entire chain of events. Beneath the